Welcome, everyone, to our monthly E3 Parent Summit. The purpose of this summit is to engage our families and equip them with practical resources that they can use and empower them to succeed on their journey in independent study with the Blue Ridge Academy. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Anna Aguilar, and I'm one of 3 family liaisons here, along with Carrie Sipka and Shannon Eves. And we're here to support our families and staff at the Blue Ridge Academy. Please take note that this session will be recorded for future viewing on our Blue Ridge Academy Parent Information Center, along with all of our other previously recorded sessions, and you're welcome to view them at a later time. To help our session run smoothly, here are a couple requests we have before we begin the presentation. If you can, please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off during the presentation, and this is to help preserve with bandwidth. We have 2 buttons on that lower portion of your screen. One is Q&A, and the other one is chat. The Q&A button is available to enter any questions you might have or comments that you would like to insert. Please note they will not be answered until after the presentation, where we will have a specific Q&A time, and we will go through those questions. So if you have something in your head and you want to remember it, write it in the Q&A, and then we'll get to it at the end of the session. We may use the chat for other things as far as a response from you if we have any questions from you. This presentation today aims towards assisting our Blue Ridge families and our staff in gaining a deeper understanding of the various ways in which generative artificial intelligence can enhance and improve our learning outcomes. We will explore strategies for maximizing the advantages offered by this emerging technology, and it's changing every day, while simultaneously minimizing any associated risks. We will learn how to better understand the ethical and responsible way to utilize AI and will be better equipped to embrace the transformative potential that it presents. Please allow me to introduce our guest speaker today. This is Matthew Sayovitz. He has a broad diversity of experience and expertise in software development and implementation in the nonprofit, educational, online learning, financial, and other sectors. Matthew's education includes a BA and an MBA from Azusa Pacific University. Bonus! He's also a Blue Ridge family, and he's a parent with the Blue Ridge Academy. So we get to score because we have him here, and he's invested in our school as well as in sharing with us how to be more mindful of this new digital age. So I'm going to stop my screen so that he can begin sharing his. Thank you, Matt. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Anna. Hey, everyone. So glad to be here with you this afternoon. Just going to move some things around here on my screen and we will get started. So just give me one moment. While I'm doing that, I'd love to hear from everyone in the chat where you've seen AI being used in society today. Any specific instances that you're aware of where AI is currently being used out in society? And while people are thinking about that, I'm gonna jump on here and creating images on social media, advertising, search engines. That's right. And AI is a really large field that's gone back, really to the 1950s. So generative AI, which we'll be talking about today, is really only one specific aspect inside of artificial intelligence. Yep, spell check. Great, fantastic. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not a robot, I promise, but I have been in software development for the last 15 years, both in enterprise and startup scales. And as Anna mentioned, my wife and I have been homeschooling for the last 6 years, and we have 4 children in Blue Ridge. I love technology, and I'm passionate about understanding responsible and informed use. And with generative artificial intelligence technologies, there are great benefits, but also some key considerations. So I'm happy to dive into that with you today. So we'll explore these areas. What is artificial intelligence and what is generative artificial intelligence? How do these platforms work? How do they learn? What are the benefits and challenges and some really key considerations? And how can you use these AI tools in education? And what are some of the resources that are out there to continue learning? So first, let's talk about what artificial intelligence is. Really, it refers to the simulation of human intelligence using computer programs. These programs are designed to emulate human thinking, reasoning, learning, and problem solving, and even adapting to new situations. The process involves humans creating computer systems that can perform tasks that typically require a human mind, such as understanding and writing languages, playing games like chess, which you might have seen, where Google had a chess deep mind that was playing against the world's champions, and translating between languages, simulating human conversation in real time. So what can you do with generative AI? And this is something that's really come on the scene, really in the last year and a half. Generative AI is an implementation of artificial intelligence that's designed for human-like generation of new text and other content, like images and video. It's trained, not specifically programmed, on massive data sources in order to recognize patterns and perform certain human tasks. Now, depending on the specific platform that you use, the free or the paid versions can also generate images, not just text. They can read and understand uploaded documents. And in some cases, you can even speak and converse with them naturally as you would with a human at this point in time. So what are some of the larger generative AI tool platforms that are out there today? Many of you have probably heard of ChatGPT, and you might have used it. ChatGPT came out onto the scene in November 2022. It was really the first consumer-facing larger generative AI platform that came into society, which is probably why it's also the most popular. Microsoft has come out with their own model they're now calling Copilot. It was kind of worked in with Bing, which is their search engine before, and now it's come out under its own brand. Google had one called Google Bard, which they've now recently rebranded, I think in the last week, to be called Google Gemini. And then there are other companies out there. One is Anthropic, and they have their large language platform that's called Claude. Now, all of these tools offer a free tier, but the paid plans will unlock additional features or remove specific limitations you might see with the free tier. So let's talk a little bit about ChatGPT and what that is specifically, just to set the stage. ChatGPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. We know the generative side is about these creating new versions of text that they've learned from. So you'll often take text that comes from ChatGPT. You can't necessarily search for that specific text in Google because it hasn't been generated in that way before. They're pre-trained because they're trained on mostly the totality of the internet's data. So they're not, you'll see some of these models like ChatGPT will say, I'm only up to date as of April 2022, right? Because they have to continually be updated. Their model has to be updated, and we'll talk about that. And the transformer is the specific type of artificial intelligence technology that's used. And transformers are a very recent, something recent that has come onto the scene in the last number of years. And that has really allowed these specific generative platforms to become less expensive and more accessible out into society. So ChatGPT being the first implementation, launched in November 2022, and it became very popular because it was just this text chat interface that could respond to you in a very human-like way. It acquired 1 million users in just 5 days. That's very viral. 100 million in 2 months. And at that point, it was the fastest growing consumer product in history. So to interface with generative platforms, you'll use what's called a prompt and prompt engineering. And these are terms that you can look up. A prompt is the way that you give it questions or instructions to the platform. Think of it like, steering a car. The prompt directs the AI's output, whether it's generating text or images. And prompt engineering is really the art and the science of designing those prompts. And there's a study around with prompt engineering, and how you get the best results, making sure that the AI understands your goals and produces content that's really relevant to you. It's creative, it's accurate. So this is a sample prompt here. I'm going to give it a persona, act as an expert math tutor. Please help me to understand this math problem. This is a consistent issue for me when I'm working with my son, because I have to refresh myself on certain math concepts. that I haven't used in quite some time. Help me to break this down and explain how I can arrive at the solution step by step. Please provide your answer while showing any relevant work for each part. So I'm going to write out this expression as a product for the following 7x plus 21. So let's go into some AI tool demonstrations so we can just look at some hands-on. I'll show you what that prompt looks like in ChatGPT, and then we'll go through some of these other tools as well. So I'm going to jump over here to ChatGPT. You can sign up for a free account at chat.openai.com. And once you log in, you'll get this style of interface. What I've done is I've taken that prompt and I've put it in here to the input window down below. And I'm just going to hit send message. And what it's going to do is it's going to help me break this down in terms of where to start from, what some of the concepts are, how to walk through it step by step, and then give me a final answer. Now, every time I try the same prompt, I might get a slightly different format for the response, and that's okay. That's just part of the generative experience. I'm going to go over here to Gemini, and I'm actually going to show you a lesson planning. So let's tell Gemini that it's an expert teaching assistant. I've got a 15-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old that I'm homeschooling, and I want to teach them about ancient Egyptian civilizations. Can you help me with a 1-week lesson plan to teach all the kids at the same time, but target the lesson and activities to each at their level? Please include digital and text resources to help. Gemini is working on that now. So what it's going to do here, because I asked it to break this down into different capabilities of different age groups. So it does it a little bit differently every time. So here it'll tell me, okay, for the 15-year-old, read excerpts from ancient Egyptian writings, discuss the literary style. For the 10-year-old, so it's going to give me age-appropriate activities. And you can actually run this. Gemini will actually provide you with different drafts. So you can see what it produced for draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, and it's going to give you different activities every time. And if you don't really, if it doesn't resonate with you the way it's done it this first time, you can modify this prompt to say, well, tweak it a little bit more like this, or remove that, or this would be more helpful, or let's change the modality, or include more actual physical learning experiments, and you can just rerun that. It's really quite fantastic. Let's look at a use case for Microsoft's Copilot. So a lot of these tools are very similar, especially with regards to how they're trained on the data, but all of them, of course, they're all in competition with each other. So they're all going to offer just a little bit of a different value to the consumer. So Microsoft's Copilot, I had used with my daughter. She was doing a learning experiment in entrepreneurship. She was a part of a maker's fair where her and 40 other children were coming up with products and designing companies to then sell those products at this maker's fair. And she wanted to come up with a brand for her company and a logo design, but we also wanted to make sure that that design really resonated with the audience that she was going to be selling her products to. So her products were slime, and these were going to be parent-approved versions of slime. So her company's name was Gummy Gooey. And what we did is we went into Microsoft Copilot Designer, and we had it generate a number of different potential logo designs for a gummy bear playing with slime. This is my 9-year-old daughter. And we took those logo designs, and she went to different activities she had with friends and groups, and she had them all vote on which specific logo really resonated with them and asked them why. And then we went back and we actually created a specific logo and brand for the company. And I just had it generate, hey, I need something that says parent approved. I want it to be in a comic style, and I want to be able to have this bear and this logo look like this is what it's saying. And boom, it gave me a parent approved image. And we use that imagery to help her test out this product as a part of her entrepreneurial experience. briefly, let's talk about Runway. Runway is a video generation platform. So what Runway does is they generate video from text. So you just have a text statement, like a prompt that you'd have and say, here, I want to have a volcano on Hawaii erupting, and it's going to generate that video for you. Runway as a generative platform also does other things in addition to generating videos. So through the power of generative AI, it'll do things like infinitely expanding images. So you can take an image, and you can have it help you imagine what exists, what else might exist around that image. Some other things it can do is it can remove certain things, from video images, which is, as we start to talk about, the potentials of how AI interacts with society, right? These types of tools show today that it's not necessarily that you can believe everything you see out there, right? As these tools become more photorealistic. So briefly, let's also look at Sora. Now, Sora was a tool that was recently introduced. It's not publicly available to use yet, but I'm assuming it will be soon. This is by the same maker of ChatGPT, OpenAI. And what they've done is they've been able to come up with a video generation model that essentially is very close to photorealistic. So this was the prompt down here for this video. And I know it's probably a little choppy where you're seeing it through the internet connection, but it is smooth if you go to the website and look at it. This is a movie trailer featuring the adventures of a 30-year-old spaceman wearing a red wool-knitted motorcycle helmet, blue sky, salt desert, cinematic style, shot on 35mm film, vivid colors. It's just incredible where this technology is going and the capabilities that that currently exist today. There's another video I'll show you here. This is historical footage of California during the gold rush. Now, this certainly looks like, to me, this could be historical footage of California during the gold rush. But one of the questions I would ask myself is, how do I really know that, right? I personally don't. Is this authoritative? How does it understand what California looked like during the gold rush? And this may not be as critically important in this specific instance, but this is a question we have to ask ourselves with anything that's generative: is how does it know? Where does it get its information from? And is that something that contextually matters in a case where I'm using it? Okay, so I'm going to jump back here. Midjourney is an image generation platform, and I'm showing you this because just so you can see the progression of progress over time and how quickly things have progressed in this generative space. So this is the same image generation prompt that was used in March 2022. And as the different versions have come out to generate these images, they use the same prompt. And as you can see here now, and this was, almost a year ago, it's basically photorealistic at this point in time. I'm sure we've all seen images that have ended up coming out as, the potential for being fake. And so this is something to absolutely keep in mind. But this progression is happening not just in image generation, but in video generation as well. So AI is showing up broadly in society. You'll find that these consumer-facing implementations of generative AI in a lot of these areas that we've just looked at. And you'll also find them in areas like co-writing expert-level software code that powers some of the world's largest software platforms. There's a huge industry that is around using generative AI to write programming code. Because what is code? Code is just a language like any other, right? A lot of different applications now, Microsoft Office or Google Documents, Gmail, you'll start to see these things pop up inside these interfaces that say, help me write, or respond to this email from me. You'll even see tools that specifically exist out there to respond for you on social media, like Taplio, which generates responses on LinkedIn that you can click and send to somebody. So as we prepare our children for the future, for their careers and for other opportunities, and to really think critically, we need to keep these ongoing societal impacts of AI in mind. not only as we see them come on the scene, but as we choose to use them as well ourselves. So when I was younger, I grew up in various situations where I saw AI characters and had, real life experiences with these types of AI characters, and they were seemingly approachable, friendly, and relational characters with very human-like personalities. And in one sense, interfacing with AI tools like these helped me to unblock preconceptions around what AI-based software is capable of because of the human-like interactions. So I'm going to show you real quick, do a quick demonstration with an audio interface with ChatGPT. Hi, ChatGPT. I'm currently giving a presentation to an audience of homeschool educators about the uses for generative AI, and I'm doing this to show your conversational capabilities. Is there anything that you would want these attendees to know about what you can offer?
Hello, everyone. It's great to be part of your presentation. I'm here to help with a wide range of tasks, especially in education. For homeschool educators, I can assist in creating customized lesson plans, explaining complex subjects in simpler terms, and providing interactive quizzes. I can also generate creative writing prompts, explain mathematical concepts, and even help with language learning. My goal is to support educators by offering resources and tools that can be adapted to individual learning styles and needs. If you have any specific questions or scenarios you'd like me to assist with, feel free to ask.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure there'll be some, but for now, I think for me, it was helpful to realize that I should think about the limits that I've unintentionally put on the scope of information, brainstorming, or solutions that could be provided through our interaction. What guidance could be given to this audience about that?
That's a great point. It's important to remember that generative AI, like me, can offer a vast range of information and ideas, often beyond our initial expectations. Here are a few tips for maximizing your interaction with AI. 1, be open-ended. When you ask questions or seek ideas, try not to limit your inquiry to what you think is possible. AI can often provide surprising and innovative answers. 2, explore various subjects. Don't hesitate to ask about different topics, even those outside of traditional education realms. This can include art, science, history, technology, and more. 3, use it as a brainstorming tool. AI can be a great partner for brainstorming sessions, offering diverse perspectives and ideas that might not immediately come to mind. 4, remember it's a learning tool. Use AI to clarify complex concepts, provide additional explanations, or offer alternative viewpoints. 5, encourage critical thinking. While AI can provide information and suggestions, it's also an opportunity for students to critically assess and evaluate the information, fostering deeper learning. Remember, the key is to approach AI as a versatile resource that can complement and enhance your teaching methods. Feel free to experiment and see how it can best fit into your educational strategies.
All right, I'm going to stop conversing with it there. Yeah, so it's very approachable. I think, Shannon, as you're saying, it sounds so real. Even the hesitation. Yes, they specifically make sure that it's going to continue to sound like we're interfacing with actual humans, and it's only going to continue to move towards these things we've seen in the sci-fi realm, throughout our our lifetimes. But I think one of the key things is now that it's so accessible, it's important to remember that no matter how human it seems, AI is not a friend, but it's a technology tool, and it brings benefits and it has considerations like any other. So let's talk briefly about where ChatGPT gets its information, because this is really a critical thing to understand. So if you consider all of the internet's information is a good way to kind of simplify it, right? They take a subset of the internet's information, and we don't know what subset that is, so we have to assume it's everything. And within that context of internet information, right, there's completely acceptable content and there's clearly unacceptable content, right? So all of that is gathered together. Now, there are implications for trying to exclude content that one person might find acceptable and unacceptable, and another person finds it acceptable, right? So that's difficult. And they don't tell us what information they're including that they're using to help ChatGPT learn. So they take this information, they have ChatGPT learn from all of that text. It recognizes the textual patterns inside of all of this information, and it builds a knowledge base that basically comes down into this GPT model. And the model could be summarized as, an ultimate single source reference library of information that ChatGPT uses to respond to anything that you ask it. So how does it work in a more detailed level? When you ask it a question, which is a prompt, they have these content moderation rules that the companies implement around the model as well. Because in one sense, this model, the technologies that they use, without going too deep into it, they're called artificial neural networks. It's difficult to understand why they make the decisions they do inside of the model. It's not fully explainable. So the model will say things that potentially the company doesn't want it to say, or maybe that it shouldn't say, or societally doesn't align with values, right? So they implement these content moderation rules around the question. Is the question this person is asking me, is it appropriate to answer? And that the company may decide that question in that way is not. And so they'll kick you back with something that says, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question because of some reason. Now, if it gets past that first content moderation rule, the GPT model will decide how to respond to that input by its understanding of everything it's learned so far from the totality of the internet's information. Then when it goes to the output, there's another set of content moderation rules that looks at and says, oh, is what the model produced appropriate to give out to the person who's requesting it? And so you can see here the potential for bias, not only within the information that the model contains, because it contains, it's been trained on this vast amount of information that includes all human experiences, but also around these moderation rules that the companies are putting in place around what they do let you ask, what they don't let you ask, and what kind of content comes out of their model. So let's look a little bit around value delivery. What makes ChatGPT so much different than Google or Bing traditional search? How does it deliver value differently? So if traditional Google search, you'll see, you ask a question like, how do I do X, Y, or Z? How do I build out a lesson plan for this topic? And it'll give you a traditional set of web links that best align with that specific topic that you've asked about. But it doesn't actually give you the solution. You might have to cobble some of the information on those various links together to actually arrive at your end goal. Now, ChatGPT will absolutely help you with that, right? As we've seen, here's how you can approach it. If you need help, you could also try this. Can you build this for me? Absolutely, I can. Here it is. And would you like me to make any changes? Okay. So when we talk about how quickly this grew in terms of user adoption, that's one big reason why. But let's talk about some considerations around the use of generative AI, right? So first, a clarity of information sources. When you do a traditional Google search, you see those links, and those links might have been generated by company A, company B, and so forth, right? So you make the decision on which link you'll click on, which source you get your information from, and whether or not you feel like that source is valid or fits within your worldview. With ChatGPT, because it responds in a summarized fashion based on, the world's information that it's learned from, it can't provide you with specific sources for a piece of generative text that it came up with, or it has difficulty doing so. And we'll talk a little bit more later about what hallucinations are and why it can be difficult to trust those sources. So it's really unclear because of the company, the data that it's trained on, The companies are not telling us what data they're training it on. The companies aren't telling us about their moderation rules that they're using. And so that results in really unclear information sources if you're looking to cite something. The companies also will share, what they feel about the biases that exist. So OpenAI, who makes ChatGPT, will tell you straight on their website, and actually all of them do this. OpenAI does this, Microsoft and Google. You need to carefully review its content because it carries forward biases or stereotypes based on the data that it's been trained on. And so here's some other areas that they will talk about in terms of things that need to be considered. Hallucinations. A hallucination refers to something where the platform generates a very confident output, but it's not actually supported or substantiated by the actual data it was trained on. Where I've seen this most is where I've asked for sources for, like, let's say, like a certain outline or lesson plan, and it actually will produce, it can make up the titles of books. So I had it where it made up a title of a book and it said the book was authored by John Doe. Clearly, the book didn't actually exist, and we know who John Doe typically is. So this is something really to watch out for. And the hard part with hallucinations is, unless you're an expert on the actual topic, right, you may not know that what you are reading is a hallucination. Now, in my experience, where I've used these generative tools for areas where I feel like I do have a relatively deep knowledge, I've never seen it misleading me specifically on, details like, for example, within software development, or let's say I'm even taking something very complex and summarizing it, to a level where I can have a conversation with my son. I felt like it summarized it correctly. But these things do exist. So they can't, have a difficult time using generative AI tools in certain critical or sensitive contexts, for example, healthcare. So we talked a little bit about some of these hallucinations that exist, but there's factual inaccuracies, statements that are factually incorrect. There's fabrication of sources or quotes that seem very confident, but they actually don't exist. And then, creation of non-existent entities, inventing the names of people, places, or events that don't exist in reality. I'll just caution too about using personal information. This might seem, like something we all would know, but many AI tools are continuing to have their training refined using humans. So humans review the input and humans review the output. And then they do this, what they call reinforcement learning by humans, so that they can continue to make the responses better and more appropriate. So these AI companies hire humans to do this. And so for this reason, you should never enter any personally identifiable information, usernames or passwords, into a text-based tool, aside from logging in and authenticating and to use it. So I typically anonymize names or locations or anything else that when I'm using something with the tool that would require that. And for a number of these, the reasons that we've talked about, there's a real importance around supervision, especially if you're opening up the use of these tools, of the entirety of this platform inside of your family. A lot of these tools, ChatGPT will say this is really for 13 plus, but we recommend, parental supervision up to age 18. Microsoft Gemini will say absolutely should not have unsupervised access to anyone, under 18, just because of, the various, if you've got all the content on the internet, right, and the model, you're able to ask questions of the model, they put these guardrails in place, but there's still the potential for, as you would, on the normal internet, right, finding out information and being able to explore certain topics that maybe are not age appropriate. So with learning and exploration with parental guidance, they can be a valuable tool. And, exploring concepts using these platforms directly, you can help, your children to think critically about certain topics. And especially if you look at two sides of a specific topic, I found generative platforms are really great for saying, okay, here's a topic, help me understand both sides of this deeply, like what people think about both sides. And so I can explore that myself and maybe explore it with my children, right? And think critically about it. One of the other areas is you may have heard about plagiarism or people using these platforms to write, full-length essays. Yes, they do that. And they can also just say, write this for me at a PhD level, or write this for me at an 8th grade level, right? And they can just flip back and forth. So supervised use really helps students to avoid, inadvertently doing this. Because, as they need to learn how to do that themselves, but also, citations are not available for this information. So it's supervision is important. So, but there are a lot of, great ways where you can use these platforms to educate. And it really just, as long as you think creatively about prompting AI in certain ways, you can really get some really great response back. So around like language arts, getting feedback on your child's writing and saying, where are they strong, where are they weak, or even sparking their imagination with really unique story starters. AI can be very creative. In science, breaking down topics, they're very complex, and helping our children to understand a complex topic, maybe in a less complex way. History, this is another area where I really enjoy, taking perspectives and debates on topics or major world events and having it explain both sides, and then being able to look at that critically. And then in math, as we've seen, can generate personalized practice problems or use it to gamify math in certain ways. Overall lesson planning and guidance for any subject or a subtopic. And as we've talked about, how you prompt it, how you ask it is important. Giving it a persona, being specific about the area, being specific about your needs and maybe your constraints that you have. I'm a part of a scouting program with my sons, and every once in a while I'll lead a session for 8th grade, 8-year-old boys or 10-year-old boys. And it's really helps me to think through, I'm talking on this topic. I need some really engaging ways, maybe I need some games on the specific topic, and then some other ways that I can keep the boys engaged and really maximize learning outcomes. And sometimes I've got constraints, whether that's time constraints or resource constraints, and it really helps to work those things into some kind of lesson plan. So there's more advanced prompts that exist and that they're starting to push out specifically for educators. So here's one link providing here on the OpenAI website about some of those prompts that they've listed and some examples. But there is a area where you'd say, okay, what kind of direct tools can I give my student, and how do we really de-risk their direct use of AI? And that's really through like narrowed or focused interfaces for AI. So for example, Khan Academy has an AI-based tutor that they've rolled out called Khanmigo. And Khanmigo, specifically, you use it within the context of, let's say, I'm studying 7th grade math. I've got a specific math problem, and I've got a small chat bot that specifically helps me with that math problem there, and I can ask it back and forth. I know I was doing some reading. Khan Academy has really tried to set more guardrails around that specific implementation. If they're using ChatGPT, in their back end, let's say, for example, they've put another layer of security on top of that to make sure that the specific chatbot that's helping with math isn't also open to talking about other types of topics outside of what the student is studying specifically. And then there's another tool that we use in our home called Readability. And Readability is an AI-based reading tutor. So students will read to the app, and then the app is recording, really assessing what they're saying and following along and helping them as they read out loud and giving them real-time feedback. And then it's also being able to track their comprehension as they read, and then ask them kind of tests at the end, assessments at the end for what they read to make sure they understand, and they can reply audibly. And it's really been a great tool for our kids. But again, these two represent very narrowed or focused interface within this area of artificial intelligence and education. And then there's some other outlets that are starting to put together using principles to assess how companies are rolling out AI. And Common Sense Media is one that I've found specifically that has a number of different articles and web pages for a number of these AI tools that they're looking at. And there's some good information there around just even how you think yourself about your worldview, your values, and how you'd like to see that, how you want to assess certain tools that you're using based on that. So I've listed some examples here as well for that. And yeah, now we can go to the Q&A. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm going to give it a second. If we have questions, this would be the time where we can either refer to the Q&A section, and there's nothing in there right now that I see, but oh, there is one right there. This was from Carrie Sipka. Why is it important to give IA a persona?
Oh, that's a great question. AI, because it has so much information, it's really helpful at the beginning to say, this is the area of your information store, your model, that I really want you to focus on. So, you can give it a very detailed persona if you'd like to. And actually, they have now what they're calling, like ChatGPT is coming out what they're calling GPTs. It's very confusing because it's the name, but it's also GPTs is also a subproduct. But these are basically smaller instances of ChatGPT that you can train it to respond on a very narrow topic specifically. So it's like taking a persona but making it very deep, and that helps it really gives it a much better response when you start to focus it early on. You're an expert math tutor, and then you get a better response from it. Yeah.
And I have to admit, I have been guilty of using an AI resource, and sometimes I will include names or things like that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I realize that I need to be a little bit smarter in not including those things. I think we get to a place where we're so comfortable, right? It's my
Absolutely.
computer, it's my information on here, and we get so relaxed about it that we end up, oopsies, hindering ourselves. So I appreciated that reminder for myself personally to just keep it very generic. And because they're using our information to continue to build, but it is, once again, it becomes like public, and so that's nice to be mindful of. If you have any questions, you're welcome to unmute your microphones. You can leave your cameras off, or you can turn your cameras back on. We're going to give it a few minutes for this Q&A time before we end our seminar, but please take advantage of asking him questions. Quiz away.
I have a question about how the children who are using this information they get from ChatGPT, how they can cite it. I heard you say, like you touched on it briefly, that it can't really be cited. So if they do use it, how can they properly cite it? And how can I check to see if they are plagiarizing when they use it? Because I have a 12-year-old who's pretty savvy with it. And, he knows to change the information around to make it his own. But I usually use a plagiarized checker before ChatGPT to check to see if he plagiarized. But now with this, I don't know if that even would work. And if it doesn't work, then how does he properly cite? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ashley. Sure do. So there's two things I'll talk about. One, there were a lot of tools that came out around checking if something was generated by AI. Was this AI generated text? And there are still a lot of companies today that are continuing to work on that problem. And it's kind of a cat and mouse problem, because as soon as a tool comes out and says, well, we can absolutely tell, that this is AI generated or not AI generated, right? Then there's always some way to kind of circumvent that by changing around certain words, right? And so you'll get some people that will say, you can't tell if something's AI generated, and then you'll get some platforms that will say, we can absolutely tell that certain portions are AI generated. So it's kind of inconclusive at this point. In terms of citing sources, so I think one way you could do that would be, probably at this point, you'd have to cross-reference. So if you got some information from ChatGPT and you could ask it, well, what books could I find this information, or what sources could I find the same information, in or at? And it may present you with some sources, and you probably have to go and actually verify, okay, that information does exist within those sources. I'm not currently sure really any other way, and there might be some out there, because it generates this, you could say, a paragraph that doesn't exist anywhere else. It is hard to know, like, if it generated it for you, where you could find that information elsewhere. So you kind of have to, like, maybe go backwards through asking it for the sources it might consider using, and then going to the sources and checking, does that information, is that information
Yeah.
verified there? Yeah.
I wonder if it's able to generate its own reference sheet. Like if you were to ask it, can you provide me an MLA format citation? I wonder if it's able to do that. I've never even tried that, but now I'm gonna experiment with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it will, I will say, it will generally, I've seen it generally give you sources on topics, okay, like ancient Egyptian civilization, and it's like, oh, those are some great sources on that, that it gives. But did that specific information that it gave you in the text it generated, does that exist in those specific sources? And I'd say at this point, yeah, you have to kind of manually check, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Great
Monica, thank you for
question,
sharing.
Ashley.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's a
That
great
was a
question,
great
Ashley.
question. Any other questions or comments that you would like to share? I mean, you can even share any of your experiences with any of these, or a reaction to what you've heard so far in this presentation.
I think it's really exciting. I had my 5-year-old daughters create a story yesterday, and they wanted to make a story about unicorn tigers, which I'm like, how am I going to find them a picture of a unicorn tiger? And then having them draw one, it's like not really going with what they're imagining. So we used DALL-E, which is like an image generator, and I told them, like, I want a picture of a unicorn tiger, and my 5-year-old was like, well, I want her to be lost in the woods. So I'm like, okay, I want a unicorn tiger lost in the woods. And then she's like, no, I want her to be a baby. I'm like, okay, I want a baby unicorn tiger lost in the woods. And, she was like, yeah, I like that picture. So we saved that picture, and then she wrote a story that went with that picture. And then I was like, okay, well, what happened to her? Why is she lost in the woods? And she's like, well, she wanted to find rainbow milk. And then I'm like, do you want it to be in a baby bottle? And then we had her put the rainbow milk in a baby bottle. And it was like everything she was imagining, we were able to get images and then write a story to go with it. And I've never seen my 5-year-old so excited to write a story and to see her imagination coming to life. So I could totally see it being just like transformative to a child's like desire to write and to create. And I was wondering about like copyright, like if it does create an image, that image is mine, right? So what I'm wondering is, like, can I use that image and, like, say they want to write a book and they want to publish this book about unicorn tigers, I wonder if that is something that they could do.
That's a great question, Ashley, and thanks for sharing that, because that was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, supposedly, so even with the image generation, I remember one of the things that the discussions that came up broadly was, you found certain artists who were seeing their signature that were showing up on AI generated pieces of art, right? And so they could tell, hey, this AI model was trained on the art that I had created. And there's a lot of arguments on both sides for, if you're, if a person is exposed to art and a certain style and by certain, artists, and then also you've got an AI that's done that, is that situationally different, and in what cases? But as far as I know, like with generative, especially like animals and things like that, I think there's no claim to copyright that these platforms use. That's for sure. Now, do they use a basis from some other artist out there. It's trained on, I mean, the data is trained on images that have existed, out there. But as far as I know, it's not that specific image couldn't be copyrightable by anyone else. Yeah.
I'll let you know though that there are some people discussing if we should be able to use AI art for cover images for books right now,
Mm,
because they are right now noticing books coming out with AI generated images, and it's getting a lot of pushback. So just be on the lookout right now for those changes and what things are going to be put in place as you put that stuff out there.
yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Shannon. I think really this is all happening so quickly. And you'd say like, it's moving faster than I think most others. And AI has been in progress for a while on the software front, but how this has collided with society and how this is potentially, changing the way a lot of jobs exist today. And some people are saying, well, white collar jobs or information jobs, a lot of those are changing, being impacted, so you'll start to see a lot of those conversations continue to come up pretty quickly. Yeah, around those topics.
Yeah, and I was going to comment on you guys were talking about copyright or citing things earlier. And you were saying that the when they come out with something, the AI kind of like matches and stuff like that. There's been people that have written papers with AI and then they go back and they're like, hey, AI, can you check and make sure that this won't get hit by the copyright issues, or like make sure my sources are all cited and everything, and it will pump out another paper that you can't check with those checkers. It's just so interesting that that we're trying to stay on top of it, but it's getting above us, and it's just like this circle that we keep going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone's interested in researching what they call AI alignment is a field of study within AI that basically says, as AI continues to, get smarter, if you want to call it that, right? How do we make sure that it continues to be aligned with societal values? And first of all, like every society has a set of values. So what are those? But how do we make sure that AI that's going to play such a pivotal role in society is continually aligned with those values? And it is really fascinating to hear, especially podcasters that you'd say are experts on alignment talking about both sides of this issue. If anyone's interested in that, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in the website outschool.com, they have a few artificial intelligence classes, one of which is called Hack Your Life. And it teaches the kids like different ways they can use AI to hack their life, basically, like how to make a schedule for their day, how to make a calendar, how to, just like different things that kids maybe find hard to organize their thoughts into. It teaches them how to use AI to hack their life, basically. So each week is a different lecture, and then they get a homework assignment to like research some ethical issue within AI, or how AI is trying to be trained to be more emotional. And like it really opens up a lot of discussion. Like I've really resisted it, but I've realized it opens up a lot of discussion about what makes a human, what distinguishes them, and look how complex it is to make a robot human-like. And it just opens up a lot of beautiful discussions about what emotion is and how unique it is to the human, and is it really unique to the human? And I feel like if we embrace it, it can really be a very educational, deep topic. So yeah, I'll just pop that link in the chat for anyone who's interested, because my son's taking the class and it's really cool. I'm learning a lot myself.
Awesome. Thank you.
I am definitely interested in that.
Yeah. And there's, gosh, I don't have the name in front of me, but there's some professors at Wharton that are basically saying, yeah, our classes include people using AI to complete assignments because it drives those discussions around ethics and around different things we need to, understand as it continues to impact society. So I'm sure a number of schools doing that too.
Yeah, I'll share a tool that I love to use that's AI. It's called Goblin.tools. It was made for neurodivergent people. It has like a task list thing. Like if you need to clean your room and you don't know how to break that down into steps, it will help break that down for you. It will help you rewrite things to sound either more professional, more social, sum up this huge thing that I want to say into like one word. It will create tasks. It will also, like if you can't think of something to cook, you can just plug in all the ingredients that you have in your home and it will output some recipes that you can make. It's an amazing tool for people with neurodivergent brains or non-neurodivergent. I know I've given this to Anna and Anna's loving it as well. It is one of my favorite tools that I use every day. I will put that one in the chat.
I do. I'm a proponent of it because it's like I write something, I'm like, and then it does it more professional. I'm like, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. That's exactly what I wanted to say. No, and it helps me to be mindful of like, oh, that's how to professionally come across, and that's how to say it. So, and then it brings out words that I'm like, oh yeah, I like that better. So, yeah, I'm slowly getting into that. So this whole seminar that you've been able to share with us has been really helpful. Things that I didn't know yet, as a kind of a beginner into this AI process and platforms. Matt, thank you so much for just honoring us with your time and just what you were able to share with us. We really appreciate it. In the chat, everyone who's here is there's a document for a survey. We would love for you to fill it out if you can. Shannon did put that in the chat. It's just a survey for us to see how this seminar worked for you, anything that you would like to add, any other seminars that you think that we should be looking into. We're trying to be on top of it. We're trying to, as family liaisons, find out where the heartbeat of our families are. Where are your needs? Where can we come to support you? How can we be there for our families? So as this digital age changes, I'm sure we're probably going to have Matt next year, and he's going to talk about something even more fabulous that's coming up and what to be mindful of. So we appreciate you being here, all of our families and guests, and just coming and spending time with us. Please fill out that survey if you have any ideas that we can look into, again, to support you, to support your families. We want to see you succeed. We are here to make that happen. And your input is so important to us. We welcome you next month. In March, we will have another E3 on conflict resolution, how to speak with our students and how to speak with our families, how to listen, how to understand. And we have another great speaker coming in. So thank you again for participating, everyone, for coming today. We will have this recording for those of you that are watching now. We will have this recording and slides available for you to click on and review at your leisure. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Let me guess who this Michelle is.
It is my wife.
Michelle, oh, wait. I don't know. Oh, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to have to text you a picture because I found this on Facebook. It was like, look, so many years ago. Oh, see, you can't.